You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. All right, everybody, welcome back. It's Friday's Finest. Yes, we're back. And yes, I'm here to referee again. Yes, Chip and James went off. They've been going off. They've been having a great show. And I'm come to crash the party because we're back here for Friday's Finest. It's always a good time. Yes, I missed the week after the Georgia Tech, Alabama, Auburn game. But yes, I am now back for the aftermath of the championship series and the college football playoff selection committee, who I believe probably honestly hasn't seen very much football in its life. They may be like the Alabama quarterback who transferred back to Notre Dame, who was thinking he was playing lacrosse the whole time he was there. So, hey, we're all in it today on Friday's Finest. A lot of stuff to talk about. We are going to hit a couple of, Chip and I are going to hit a couple of relevant topics here on the Daily Wire, but then we're going to get straight into the craziness that is going on right now in the world. All right here, available for you, free of charge. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button. Know that we're here every week for Friday's Finest right after the break. Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. Hey, everybody, it's MyPillow's 20th year anniversary, and over 80 million MyPillows have been sold. Mike Lindell and MyPillow wants to thank each of you and every one of you for giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is a time to try out something other than the amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo Collins, Collins, to receive this amazing offer on the queen-size MyPillow for $19.98, or call 800-986-3994. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. You know how I know that? Because I sleep on a MyPillow every night. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 today. All right, we're out. The break is over. Payday's over. It's time now to jump into it. James, how we doing, buddy?
Oh, we're doing fantastic. How are you?
We're just lovely. Chip, are we making it today?
Yes, sir. We're ready to go, man. We're ready to go, and James and I are happy to have you back.
Well, we're glad to be back. All right, let's hit a couple of sort of as much as you like to think they're farcical, but you actually can't make this crap up. This is the real world these days. There's some real serious situations going on, and it was no more highlighted the stupidity of the left and the elitism of the left. Especially in higher education this week, just a couple of days ago, on Capitol Hill with the MIT, Harvard, and Penn presidents coming to the Hill and could not say that telling you that we're going to exterminate the Jews is hate speech. And then a day later, this is what makes it so bad, Chip, so bad. Not only do you have a chance to just simply say, yes, it's bad, but then you wait 24 hours and your PR team puts out a video.
Oh man, I mean it was shocking when it happened, and then it you know, the old adage reminds me of the old adage of stop digging a hole, get out of the backhoe, and put the shovel down. I mean, it never amazes me. It never amazes me how dumb some smart people can be, and there's some smart people there, but they can't get it. I mean, Elise Stefanik's question was pretty simple. Is it not calling? I think the exact question was calling for genocide of Jews against your code of conduct.
Yeah,
and the answer should have been, of course.
Yeah. Instead, we tried to do it. As you and I both have a very dear friend, Lynn Westmoreland, who we evoke here quite often, he tried to get too cute by half. They tried to get too cute by half.
Yes.
But, well, if it's conduct, okay, well, then tell me then why you ban every right-wing person from coming to your campus. So riddle me this, Batman. You can't let Tom Homans, who's a good friend of this program, a former ICE director who is very conservative, you won't let him come to the Penn campus because his ideas are controversial. You won't let folks like Ben Shapiro and others appear. You let, from the right, all of these get banned from campus because of what they say, no conduct involved, but what they say, and yet you're now telling me, well, was there conduct? Did they actually take, and I hate to say it this way, did they actually round up the Jewish students to kill them? I mean, that's basically what they're trying to say here.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been very curious to see what the three presidents' responses would have been to Congresswoman Stefanik had she said, "Do you believe it's against the code of conduct at Harvard University to call for the genocide of African Americans in the United States,
or transgender, or any of
or transgender, or LGBT?" I mean, it's just fascinating. It keeps going. I mean, it's the gift that keeps giving from the stupidity side.
Well, the interesting thing is, though, is we all well know about one thing: money does talk. And the last 60 days for some of the most wealthiest endowed colleges in the United States in the Ivy League, they have taken a big time hit. And for the Jewish donors in particular, and many of them are very large donors to Harvard, to Penn, to MIT, and these places, they're now looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we're not going to keep funding this, stupidity. And look, if nothing happens here, then it is a travesty, and it tells us that we're on, more of a downhill climb than I actually thought we were in many of these institutions. But it's just, it's amazing how this is continuing on. And, you made the comment about, not understanding. I mean, these folks are so, scholastically minded that they're no earthly good.
Oh,
I mean, it's pathetic.
And one other thing, Doug, you wonder where those donors were beforehand, because, to many of us on the right, this isn't a huge surprise, right? But it's even too difficult for, mainstream donors, or even I would, dare say some Democrat donors. It's too much, I mean, this shouldn't be that hard. It should be really simple. It should be very simple.
Yeah.
But it seems very hard to them, and it's very puzzling.
Can you imagine how much they pay for publicity, and now crisis management, when all it would have took was yes, and we're doing our best. We failed in the past, and we're going to do better now. That's all they had to say.
And they still haven't said it.
No. That's the part that kills me. They just haven't said it.
It's not like they said that yesterday after they had 24 hours to realize how bad their comments were.
They could pay for what I'll say this. You and I could both send letters to Harvard, Penn, MIT, or any of these others and say, look, however much you have paid all your government affairs people, your public affairs, your communications team, Chip and I, for one quarter of whatever you've paid all of them, we will show you a way out of this that will get you out of it very quickly. And you and I still wouldn't need to work for a couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, millions and millions of dollars aggregate these organizations are spending on messaging and PR, and it's either they're not listening to them or they need better PR people. Probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you. Hey, turning a real world farce, if you would. And I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, Chip. I've not talked about it, an overwhelming bit. I've let some of these things sort of play out. But New York City is the hotbed for legal stupid. Okay, I'm just going to lay it out there. First, you have Alvin Bragg's, charges against Trump that are just, again, you can't make some of this stuff up. Number two, you now have a fraud case. Now, think about this for a second, Chip. And this is, take Trump out of it for a second. Now, think about this, though. Letitia James is using millions of dollars in taxpayer money in the state of New York to bring a lawsuit against Trump and the Trump family and the Trump businesses based on the accusation of fraud. And now, when you also discuss fraud, who is the injured party here? By the way, U.S. Supreme Court have made some pretty clear arguments here, especially like in the Virginia governor case and others. There has to be a very understanding here of fraud, and there has to be also, in one of the cases there, but also other cases, that there has to be a aggrieved party, if you would, in this. And so now you had just this past week, Deutsche Bank, who is one of the main issue here of loans, has come in and said, not only did we take his financial statements, we did our due diligence, we cut his own estimates in half, gave him money, made money, and would give him money again. How can the judge say that there is fraud here? And how can people actually believe? Because if it was Doug Collins or Chip Lake or anybody else, this has become the government. If they could win this and win it on appeal, what's to stop them from going after anybody they don't?
Well, it's the weaponization of the not even criminal justice system, of the justice system, both civil and criminal, and it just there's no stopping it. I mean, the reality is, Doug, anybody that's had to apply for a loan to buy a house, right? I mean, most people listening have done that, right? Very few people can just outright pay cash for a house. Most of us have mortgage on houses. When you do that, you fill out a lot of paperwork. And then during the underwriting process, there might be some questions that, that the underwriters and folks come up with. But the reality is, they're double checking everything that you put in the loan application. And that's just for a house loan. So imagine the underwriting process at Deutsche Bank for a business loan of that magnitude. I mean, it's like, come on, who are the aggrieved parties here? If they agreed, they cut valuations. If they agreed to make the loan, if they made the loan, if the loan was settled, if they made money and said they would do it again, I don't know who the victim is in this process.
The only victim is the taxpayers of New York.
Yes,
that's the only victims in this case, because they voted a political AG for the state who is ignoring every other crime up there, it appears, and every other situation in New York City and New York State as a whole, to prosecute a case in which is even more, because I've read some articles, Chip, where she's actually, the attorney general is showing up at the hearings for these things. 8 or 9. This is the attorney general.
Yeah, it's just,
and she's actually physically showing up for these cases.
It's completely out of control, and I don't know. I don't see an end in sight for it. I mean, I think it's part of the fabric right now of our political system. Is the judicial system has just been interwoven in the two, and that's unfortunate, because it wasn't the case for generations and generations. We're just living in a new time.
Yeah, but yet at the same point in time, you look at the other cases as well. I was talking to someone in D.C. this week. I was up there and we were talking about the documents case and the Trump document case, how they sent 9 armed guards into Mar-a-Lago, to find all this stuff. And yet there is legitimate. Now, look, they're going to have a trial on it. Jack Smith's got it. There's a legitimate argument. Did he declassify? Did he not declassify? Did he hold them in safe areas? Okay, I get all that. But you're dealing with also on the flip side of this, and I'm not doing the whataboutism. I'm just being the honest two-step system of justice here, where the sitting president, Joe Biden, while he was vice president and senator who had no declassification authorization or anything else, had classified documents, but yet you never hear anything about that case.
Crickets.
Yeah, just silence. And nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, the mainstream media just ignores it. And then political, and that's where you and I get our, more in our wheelhouse continue. Politically, it is fascinating to me how you still have some on the left and some on the right who do not understand why Donald Trump continues to rise in the polls.
Oh yeah,
based on these cases.
Well, I can tell you, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Chris Christie are aware of why that is. I mean, they know that all of this benefits Donald Trump. I mean, it's kind of the genesis of his campaign, right? Which is why since the beginning it's not been a competitive primary. And I know nobody started voting yet, but wait when they do. It's going to be reflective of what these polls are, and it's going to be very fast.
Yeah, very much. Real quick before we move on to the Friday's Finest, when we get into some of our fun stuff here. Real quick, I don't know about you. I'm sick of the just the other night the News Nation debate. I wouldn't have known where to find News Nation if you told me that and gave me a map to listen to it. But I've seen all the clips. At a certain point in time, and now I'm hearing CNN is going to do 2 more debates before New Hampshire. This is ridiculous.
Why?
I don't get it. And, Chris Christie made the best comment of the whole night last night when he said, these 3 they're not running against each other.
He did make the bet. He did. And he made news with it. And he's right. I mean, for all of Christie's faults, God knows he has it. I mean, that was the one thing that made the most sense in the debate the other night.
Oh yeah, it's like we're not y'all forget we're not debating the right people here. So anyway, that's some stuff we needed to get out of the way, just craziness as we go. So now it's time to turn our attention to the real things. But Chip, I just had undocumented, completely secondhand at this point. I think we may get firsthand documentation here. I'm doing a drum roll now, but undoubtedly there was some excitement in the outer stretches of Dallas, Texas. We go now live to Dallas, Texas, because James has had something happen on a walk this afternoon involving a elderly lady. And James, are you with us today? What is the reporting from Dallas?
Oh God, guys, I'm with you. Let's talk about it. So, just for quick reference, I've been working out for the last year and a half, about a year. And I'm down 126 pounds. Everybody clap. Thank you. No big deal. Hear me out. So I've been walking every day, and I'm up to 2 miles a day trying to push myself, right? And I think I'm moving. I mean, I felt like I was moving today. And then up the right side comes Tyreek Hill. This woman passed me at about 200 miles an hour. She must have been 5'1", 380 years old. This woman flew by me. Now I'm like, no, that's not cool. So I went and I tried to catch her because I wasn't going to get punked by some old lady. Turns out it's this old Asian lady. So now it looks like I'm trying to commit like a speed walking hate crime. So now I got to back up. But then in my head, I'm like, no, I can't. So now I'm trying, but now I can't catch her because she's gone. I'm not going to say I'm totally embarrassed, but I really, really got humbled today. And that's the news from Dallas this morning. It happened like an hour before I was like, I got some time to go for a walk. Oh my God, guys. I'm the slowest person on the planet. It's official.
Well, James, look, maybe she was only doing a quarter mile or a half mile walk.
I just started.
Oh, you had just started.
I was just getting going. I was just catching catching that. Like,
giving you the benefit of the
doubt.
doubt.
No, you can't. No, this woman, she's probably on lap 6. I'm telling you, this lady flew by. I've never seen this flew by me. And I felt like every cornerback that's gone up against Tyreek Hill this season. It was absolutely insane. I guess that's a good transition to go into football, right?
Yeah. Number one, we're proud of you. Keep walking, okay? That's your motivation to beat the
My motivation is
lady
to
around
find
the
this
track.
woman and torch her the next time I see her.
Chip, we're going to have to go to Dallas to see this. I mean,
you just see me. It's going to be nationally televised. 30-year-old James Simeone, who's recently lost some weight, races 600-year-old woman from Dallas, Texas, loses by 3 minutes.
But it's progress, James. It's progress. We're all proud of you.
Progress, baby. Progress. I love it.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, Chip, I don't know if he can get much better than that the whole rest of the show.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. Hey, let's start off with some easy ones first before we get into just the absolute abject stupidity of the college football playoff system. A couple of quick things come across the board. Breaking today, John Rahm is leaving PGA and going to LIV.
Good for him, huh?
600 million.
Did you say 600? I thought it was 300.
Yeah,
I think it's somewhere between.
Yeah, so I mean, word had been out all week that was a likelihood, and 600 million was the dollar amount that everybody was speculating on. The reports that I read about an hour ago said it was only 300 million. So somehow he took a shave and a haircut during the week. But
it's 3 years, right? It's a 3-year deal.
It's for it says it's for a minimum of 3 years. For 300 million, and I'm not really good at math, but that's 100 million a year. That's pretty good.
You can say whatever you want about how great the PGA Tour is, but until they start giving out that money, they're going to lose everybody.
And they don't have that money to get out.
$100 million a year. Shohei Ohtani isn't going to make that, and he's the best player on the planet in baseball right now.
Yeah. Hey, I can't. Here's what I can't understand. Okay, and this is the interesting part here is you look at these PGA. Number one, I did not know this, and just shows you I just don't follow this closely. I thought after the summer announcement of PGA and LIV that all of that was finalized, and now I come to find out after talking to Chip and I have a mutual friend, it's not finalized. Number one, they still don't have this agreement. The curious question will be. And I think this is going to put the pressure on the PGA Championship. It's going to put the pressure on the U.S. Open and some of these others that are keeping LIV players out. At some point in time, when you legit have most of the top 10 or top 25, even though they're not being ranked because they're not taking the LIV tournaments into account, excluded from these tournaments, it's going to become beyond Chip and James. I want to hear y'all's comment about this. It's going to become more than just the PGA. It's the sponsors of the PGA. They're going to have to say, whoa. We're not going to be, MasterCard, Visa, Mercedes-Benz. We're not going to keep pumping millions and millions of dollars into your advertising here if we don't have the best, if you're not letting the best players play.
Yeah. Doug, I mean, where do I start? There's so much to unwrap there, right? It is the LIV model is unlike any model I've ever seen. It's a model that doesn't need to generate any revenue or make any money. I mean, they're not in it to make a profit. I mean, and I think it's fair to say they've been pretty transparent about that, right? I don't know that they would argue with that. I mean, this is for lack of a better term, sports washing, and using sports to accomplish another goal. And look, they have a lot of money. Like Jimmy Dunn said, who was negotiating on behalf of the PGA Tour when he gave his congressional testimony, he said they got a lot of money. A lot of money. And he goes, and the traditional, factors that go into any financial negotiation don't exist there. And so, I still think one of the biggest challenges that LIV has is that they're global. It's kind of tough to watch. all the players start on different holes, and so I watched a little bit of the final that they had at Doral this past year, and Harold Varner was playing 18, but his last hole was 1. And the guy behind him, I think it was Bryson DeChambeau, his first hole was 1. So 18 was his final hole. It's confusing. It's kind of hard to keep up with. They don't have a major TV sponsor because, to your point, Doug, a lot of these sponsors know what the Saudis are doing with this golf league. And so, they still want to pump up the PGA Tour. If it's an arms race, as Jimmy Dunn said, the PGA Tour can't win an arms race, I'm curious to see. Look, I hate to see John Rahm leave because I'm not going to get to see him play a whole lot because a lot of the times the LIV tournaments are on or in the middle of the night because they're in Asia and Singapore, and they have 5 or 6 tournaments and here and maybe one in South America that we could watch. But it's just I don't know where this ends, right? But the framework agreement that they had 6 months ago was just to drop all the litigation and continue talking. And so the litigation got dropped, but if they have an agreement that they have to work out by the end of the year, I can't imagine that LIV is successfully poaching John Rahm is going to help those negotiations the last 3 weeks.
No, I agree. I agree. Hey, James, from a media perspective, and as we talk about this, though, Chip brought up a great point. Right now, you have to find it on the CW or whatever, and, it's about like me trying to find News Nation last night. It's how you do it. But from a media perspective, when do you think one of the big ones who maybe, let's just talk about, and I'll bring it up, ESPN is bleeding cash. Okay, they're having issues. They're trying to bring it up. You've got a group like LIV that Chip has said is doesn't have to make a profit. They actually go to say an ESPN, or they go to a NBC, or they go to a Fox Sports or something like that and say, look, here's the deal. We're going to be buying the rights. We're going to, is the opposite of the normal thing. So we'll give you $300 million a year to broadcast our stuff. Because this is what they do when they go and bid for, PJ or what is it, $1 billion deals that they're doing with the Big Ten and SEC and everything else. They're bidding it out. And basically and they say, good, you can keep your ad revenue, for the first 2 years. So you get not only us paying you, but we'll give you ad revenue on top of it for the first 2 years. How long do you think, James, we're away from something like that if LIV really wants to go through with it?
We probably aren't far. I have a couple of things. First and foremost, if I'm going to somebody, I'm going to YouTube. Think of it this way, right? You go to YouTube, people, like you said, sometimes they're not in America, so the timing's off. When you try to put it on ESPN, you got to search for it, and it's also, if you go to YouTube and you've already looked up LIV Golf, it'll have that night's thing first thing in the morning, and you can watch it. Like, YouTube has if you're watching the Pat McAfee show, whatever, it'll show up today's show at 3:00 when it ends, and you can just watch the whole thing. You don't have to have an app. You don't have to do anything. You just have YouTube. It's the easiest thing on the planet. That we're not far from that. But I have a question for you guys because I wasn't alive for this, and I don't want to make you feel old. But the USFL, right?
Hey, they were stealing guys. James, who passed you today, James?
I don't think that's relevant at the moment. No, but in all seriousness, with the USFL was stealing guys from the NFL, right?
Yeah.
And then the NFL was like, no, this can't happen, right? Golf's going to have to make that decision. The PGA is going to have to make that decision because if you have a company that doesn't care about profits, you can't. That is something you literally cannot compete with. It's a fact. You cannot compete with someone who's willing to throw all their money into something and not expect something back.
Yep.
That's impossible. Yep. So all they have to do is show up to YouTube, ESPN, whatever it is, and say, hey, we just want to be on. Like you said, we'll give you the first 2 years, blah, blah, blah. PGA will be on Peacock or whatever, but okay, that's all they have. That's it. That's literally all they have. And there is absolutely no way they can compete. So I know that those talks kind of stalled. The PGA is going to eventually figure out a way to come up with a sum of money that makes sense to Americans and hopefully a couple of the foreign players that says, hey, if you stick with us, we'll get TV rights in all these other places. They're gonna have to make a jump in to paying players the way everybody else does.
The biggest difference there in that situation, I think that you described with NFL and USFL, is in that case, NFL was LIV, and USFL had no way to compete. When NFL started to really lower it, the boom on them. And in this case, like Chip said a few minutes ago, it's the reverse. PGA cannot outspend LIV. There's just no way to that. But Chip and James, here we go, and I think we'll wrap it with this. I predict that if LIV wants to continue this, and I think this is an interesting if, because you don't really know why they did it to start with in a sense, because I'm not sure they're gaining at this point what they thought they were going to gain in public perception and everything else. But if they continue in this, we're a year. Here's a prediction for the day. We're a year away from a major, more mainstream TV deal for LIV.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fact.
Yeah, because they can pay for it. They don't have to. They can go to a TV vendor and say, "Look, we're going to give you," and especially for some of those that are actually struggling, they can give them money up front and say, "Look,
they have Scrooge McDuck money. They can do whatever they want."
They're at the end of the day, they're going to have to be, but they're also, here's another thing too, that has nothing to do with money. And anybody that plays golf knows they got to change their format. I mean, the reality is consumers don't give a rip about the team concept in golf. And they don't like watching shotgun starts with the best golfers in the world. It's just the reality of it. And so, the benefactor behind LIV, Yasser El-Rumayyan, this is kind of his baby. And look, he's going to make it, he'll make it work because they don't need to make money. And, but I think he's got to be a little flexible in some format changes. And if they do succeed at getting format changes, then watch out. And but you're going to have that, but I still think kind of playing in, different times in foreign countries is tough for the North American market, but I guess we're about to see, and Doug might be right.
Yeah, well, that's why no Americans, unless they really truly follow golf, know the European players. They just don't know them, and and
right.
only if they come over to the PGA do they know the European players, the Fleetwoods and the Roy McIlroys and the others who came to the PGA. I mean, it's just fact of life kind of stuff. Look, the interesting thing though is Chip, I'll agree with you, but if you hear some of the conversations from the players like the team concept. I just don't think I'm agreeing with you. I just don't think it catches on because
players
it's so
like
nuanced.
it. Consumer, I could care less about. I mean, if you're watching golf, I don't care whose team everybody. I just don't care. I mean, that's great that they golf. Like it. But
yeah, play good golf. I do. Another prediction before we move on. I think you're going to see. Although the PGA started this with and I'm excited because we're about a month and a half away from the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and that wonderful par 3 where everybody's sitting around watching it like it's the Coliseum back in the days. And LIV has actually adopted that. I think in the future you're going to see more of that. Would we have ever thought, Chip, and yes, okay, James, we'll talk about us feeling old. Would you have ever thought that we would have watched Caddyshack or Caddyshack 2 and thought it was actually becoming reality?
No.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
I mean, I would watch that, though, wouldn't you?
Short answer, no.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny. I see you, Gopher.
That's right.
All right, moving on. New concept for NIL. And I heard this the other day. Listen, we won't spend a lot of time here, but we got to spend a little time here, where they will actually put, this was this concept, after a play, say somebody gets a long touchdown run or a good hit, they'll put the play up, and with the NIL, some link to the player that if he has a good player, you can actually give $5 or $20 real time on the scoreboard. Are we there yet?
I love it.
That's like me having a tip at a place that I've never tipped before, like I'm getting coffee. No. This is exactly when you go into a store that you've never tipped in your entire life, and all because of COVID, all of a sudden we got to tip every person who's ever existed. You go in and it's like, are you sure you don't want to give a tip? No, I'm absolutely sure. I've been coming here for 10 years. I don't want to give you any more money than I already have. Now I got to just pay we shouldn't have to pay them. We already pay the tickets to go to the games and buy ESPN and all this nonsense to watch the games. You pay them. Get out of here.
Hey, as an Auburn fan, we don't see many good plays. Okay. So, I could rub some pennies together and make it in all seriousness. I love it. I mean, I think it's, instead of just throwing all the money in the pot at the beginning of the year and trying to raise money for millionaires to try to get players to make visits here, if I'm On to Victory is the Auburn Collective for name, image, and likeness. It's the account. I would love for them to be able to set up where I could watch a game and I could I could pay quarterback, running back, a wide receiver. I mean, I wouldn't have a lot of money to pay them, but you talk about paying for a performance. I mean, if we really want all these kids to get paid, what better way to do it than to reward them for good performance?
Do you know how many kids are going to be fighting to score a touchdown? They're going to try to kill each other.
Hey,
they're going to Tanya Harding some running back so he can get in and score a touchdown.
I want my players fighting to score touchdowns because right now I don't feel like any of them are.
There's going to be a backup running back that's got no cash on him. He's going to beat up the starter the night before so he can get in and score a couple touchdowns so I can Venmo him $3? I don't think so.
Hey, though, on a serious note about NIL money, though, and this is, and it's already starting. We could have, because it's not, the NCAA is completely decrepit and should be out of existence. They've done this now, in which you're starting to see the first lawsuits that are going to upend NIL anyway. You're starting to see that the other sports and female athletes and others are saying they're not getting their fair share. Now, I'm going to make a very unpopular statement here, and for any of you on the podcast who doesn't like it, I'm sorry. If the college football team is making 98% of your money, they should get 98% of the benefit. You do not get – and then if you have 2% that you can solve for other programs, okay, I know that's not fair. I know that's not equality. I know that's hurting the Olympic sports or whatever you want to call it. Set up a separate fund so that the Olympic athletes can train in a different area. But this idea that, and I think it's going to get really interesting here because, think about it, at Auburn, at Georgia, at Alabama. Look, I know for a fact there are two, and this was up until recently, two sports at the University of Georgia that made money. One, the football team. Two, the women's gymnastics program. That's the only two that made money. So explain to me how the NIL, which started in football, grew out of football for the most part, has to then take everything else. But these lawsuits are going to go through. Mark my words, it could be the end of NIL because they didn't have the sense enough to do it right the first time.
You're probably right, but they're going to somehow something's going to get dismantled, whether it is the NCAA, which I doubt that could happen, but whatever it is, it's just going to be restructured, and it's just going to be the NFL. They're just going to figure out a way to pay guys. They're going to have a payroll. They're going to have people buying the school team. Like I wouldn't be surprised if someone I know it's a school, but let's use Georgia for example, okay? Mark Cuban has some money lying around. He can be an investor in Georgia's football team, and then he basically just pays all the players so he can get the best guys. Does that seem out of the realm with NIL?
Yep.
No. It's wild west. I mean, it's it's crazy, and they're gonna. And I think what Doug was alluding to in the lawsuits too is, they're gonna run in. They're very close to running into some Title IX issues, and how the court's going to come down with that, and then the reality is, I mean, half of it is an NIL anyway. You're just paying players. NCAA President Charlie Baker this week, the former governor of Massachusetts, came out with and I haven't even had an opportunity to dig into his proposal, but I think it was a tiered system there where big schools can opt in and you can pay players directly instead of under the guise of NIL. I mean, look, is it any surprise that this thing is just is completely off the rails and out of control? No, we knew it would be when it first came out, and we'll see what market corrections happen in the next couple of years, because it is, as funny as it would be to pay players, when they make first downs, and I think that's hilarious, and I'd love it. It's probably a little much.
Well, here's the deal. You want to see one thing worse than the NCAA's lack of handling this is letting the United States Senate and House decide this. That would be even worse in this regard. Look, they led themselves down this path. The NCAA has shown itself to be completely incompetent. The NCAA has shown itself to be 5 years behind anything that is going on for the most part, especially when it gets to the bigger sports, football, even basketball, to a point. They were given a gift of the NCAA tournament years ago that solves a lot of their NCAA basketball problems. But the dollars and the revenues and the atmospheres of college football is just completely different, which I think really then transitions us into our last discussion probably of the day. And speaking of worthless institutions and institutions that have issues, and whether your team gets in or not is irrelevant. I don't agree with Paul Feinbaum a great deal at all. Okay, I listened to him. Paul is Paul. Paul's got his own opinions. But Paul made the comment the other day after one of the ESPN reporters made the comment, who wrote the article about how they came to their decisions and all this kind of stuff. She made a comment that said, look, if you're in the same room, this sounds much like how it's done in the military, how you do promotion boards, okay, in all reality. That everybody has their own tablet. They make their own votes on their own tablet. Nobody sees who votes for whoever. And it goes to one person, they tabulate it, and then they send it back in case there is a disagreement. Nobody knows. And it just is interesting to me, Chip, and maybe I'm just too, again, I full disclosure, I think this year's is wrong. I just do. But I've also thought other years was wrong when even Georgia got in. Okay, I'm just saying this. But to not have any transparency and actual real, here's what happened, and now the reporting's coming out that the night of Saturday night, FSU was in, and on Sunday morning, FSU was out. What changed overnight? And so here we are.
They didn't have the SEC team in. They needed one. That was I'm sorry. That's it. I know they can tell me all they want that their quarterback was down, and I get it. I thought about this a lot because you guys know that I'm on the Florida State side of this. We talked about it on the phone. I get that their quarterback isn't there, and I get that they struggled a little bit against Louisville. And I just feel like you're talking about kids who put everything on the line for 14 wins, and then they let Texas in. Listen, the Alabama thing, we can fight about all we want. They need an SEC team. They put them in. But to put Texas in over them was absurd. And I don't care that they would have gotten blown out. They did everything they were supposed to do to get in. They did their job. They literally told them, this is what you have to do to get in. And then they were like, yeah, but. It's crazy.
Well, but I would say, I mean, look, I feel terrible for the kids at Florida State, and it is a flawed system. It's a flawed system that has a remedy for this year's problem that will happen next year, and that is next year it'll be an expanded. Doug, to answer your question specifically, what happened? I think FSU was in. I disagree with the position to put FSU in even before kind of looking at the game. But if you were to watch, and the problem is they were the primetime game, right? So they weren't the noon game like Michigan and who was it, Michigan and Iowa, and they weren't the Friday night game that was Oregon and Washington, or even the 4 o'clock. I mean, they were the primetime game, and it was a horrid football game to watch. And I mean, Florida State ended up running the Wildcat to win that game 16-6. It feels like a game that's going to go on. I know we're recording on Thursday, and this will run tomorrow on Friday. But I mean, you got the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight against the New England Patriots. I mean, the game kind of felt a lot like that. And they did need an SEC team in there. And the reason they needed an SEC team in there is because the SEC is the best conference in college football. It is what it is. And this was the rare year where you had 5 teams that had a really legitimate case from the 5 major conferences. And, I hate it for Florida State, but I will say this and then I'll shut up. I've heard a lot of compelling arguments over the past 3 days on Florida State's behalf, a lot. But all those compelling arguments lack one argument. Not one person who's arguing that Florida State should have been in is making the following argument that I'm about to make. They're not saying they're one of the 4 best teams. And that's what the committee said. I mean, I could argue Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia are all better than Florida State right now. So I just think realistically the Florida State people have a right to be upset. I'd be upset too. But they're not making with a straight face that they are one of the 4 best teams. And so it's tough this year.
Well, it is. And look, this is an unusual year in which you had Washington, you had Michigan, you had Florida State all unbeaten. That's a rarity. Okay, number one. Then you had the 1-loss conference championship games, which are not as rare because that happens most years. Here's my problem. Okay, on the last year of the 4. Now, and everybody says, "Oh, Doug, don't worry about it. Next year, all 12 will be in, and you'll be back again. You'll be at 6." Well, and the crazy part, out of 12, 5 will be from the SEC, possibly 6 from the SEC next year. I mean, if it was this year, I think it's 5.
Right, because Texas and Oklahoma are part of the SEC.
Yeah, well, but even then, especially if you had Texas, Oklahoma, which I discount. But you still had Georgia, you had Georgia, Alabama, Missouri, and fiddle. I think in LSU in the top 15.
Ole Miss.
That's it. Ole Miss. So that's 5 right there. Okay. Now here's my problem. Everybody remember back to 2017. I know this is hard for Chip because of the Alabama connection here. 2017, Alabama does not even make the SEC championship game. But you know what piece of hardware they have in Tuscaloosa right now? They have a natty. They were put into the college football playoff and did not even play in the SEC championship game. It is hard for me to understand. I can understand FSU getting in or not getting in. Okay, the unbeaten Big 5 conference champion. I get it. What I do not understand is you put them number 4 for 2 straight weeks after their quarterback went down. You said for 2 straight weeks they were one of the best 4 teams in college football, and they never lost. And yet you keep them out. But then and I'll go back to being Georgia here for a second. You take a number 1 Georgia team who has 45-1 going into that game, 12-0 this year, who beat 3 top 25 teams, and they dropped to 5th. And Texas, 6.
No.
In Texas, they dropped 5 places. They dropped to 6.
Yeah, they dropped 5 places.
Texas, who had 1 good game this year, and I'm so sick of them saying that was the most quality win of the year. 1 good game. They get beat by Oklahoma. They struggle against the most of a very crappy Big 12 schedule, and they get put in over in Oregon even. I'm frank. I just don't get it, and I don't understand how you put Florida State in the top 4 for 2 weeks with their quarterback down, and then drop them out. And you take an undefeated Georgia, who is back-to-back natty, and drop them 5 places.
It's not like they got blown out by Alabama either.
No, it's 3-point game.
That's my problem.
A 5-yard penalty, and it's a tie ball game. It's overtime.
If you're not gonna, that's my thing. If you're not going to have but look, we move on for the Florida State thing. You're right. They probably could. They probably wouldn't win a game. They probably would get blown out in those games, right? But Georgia's not getting blown out in these games. They play great defense, and I'm not saying that they're better than Alabama. I'm fine with Alabama getting in, whatever. But to tell me that Texas is better than them is ludicrous when they only lost by 3 points to the team you think is arguably number 1. That's nuts.
Yeah, look, when Texas beat Alabama at the beginning of the year, I mean, I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell Hopefully I didn't say that on the Doug Collins podcast. I didn't think there was any chance whatsoever that game would have meaning in the discussion that we're having now, but it did, right? And so, when Alabama beat Georgia by a field goal in the SEC championship, the committee was like, look, and I got even worse news for Florida State fans. And I hate to say this, but had Auburn beaten Alabama and stopped them on 4th and 31, and Alabama beaten Georgia would have been 4. I mean, they would have put an SEC team in there, and Ohio State would have still been 5. But I also say this too, and it's like when you lose and how you lose is important as well, and when you win and how you win is important. And so, Texas winning their national title game. I mean, I think the committee got together that Friday. And I think they were in Indianapolis. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they were somewhere else. But, they spent Friday night, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning together. And, those were the times when all those teams played except for Ohio State. And I think that was it. I think Ohio State was the only one that didn't play during that time. So, those games kind of served as de facto. Some of them, the Washington-Oregon game and the Georgia-Alabama game served as de facto quarterfinal games.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think at the bottom line, I think Alabama and prediction, we'll have more time to talk about this between now and then. My prediction right now, Alabama wins another national championship. Will be real discussion.
Whoa, that's a big prediction.
Yeah, Michigan. They'll be. I think there's a close vote right now. What is it? 3 points on or actually Alabama's an underdog right now. I think they'll win by at least a touchdown or better against Michigan. Don't really care who wins the Texas-Washington game because I do believe this. I think either Michigan or Alabama will beat the winner or loser of that game by probably 2 touchdowns, if not more. I think this is Alabama is, 8th. This would be 8th under Saban, wouldn't it? Or is this 7 under Saban?
Oh gosh,
he had 1 before he got there. So I'm trying to.
It's more than one hand.
Yeah. So anyway, but it would be possibly a transition for him if he wanted to, to leave, because I got to give him credit, and it's been no joke on this podcast. I like Alabama. I grew up with Alabama, grew up with Georgia. I grew up with both of them, but his coaching this year, after what we saw in that Texas game in those first couple of games, to get Alabama, I'm like you, Chip. There wasn't no way in heck that I thought Alabama was going to make it. They
looked horrible against South Florida the week after Texas. They looked horrible. And I said that week the Alabama dynasty is over. I said they don't have a quarterback. They could lose 3 or 4 games this year. Silly me. I'm never saying something as stupid.
Yeah, and then Jalen Milroe turned into a superstar overnight.
That's for sure. By the way, they were out there in James's backyard getting boat whipped around the track by some lady, some elderly woman. That's where the college football playoff people were.
Never should have told this freaking story. By the way, Nick Saban has 7 championships, and one of them was at LSU. So
we're going to revisit this a lot, brother.
I believe we are. Yeah.
No, real quickly though, before we get going, because we've gone a while, but I do have an interesting point of view. It's another little quick tidbit. They said that Alabama, it was a Texas win over Alabama, and that Alabama played them, and they kept talking about Georgia's schedule. Again, we beat 3 top 25 teams that are still in the top 25, but who's the former coach at Mullen? He was with y'all, wasn't he, at Auburn?
Dan Mullen?
Yeah.
No, he was at Mississippi State. Florida. He was with Mississippi State in Florida.
Yeah. This brilliant individual went on TV the other day and says, well, Georgia had Oklahoma and they took them off the schedule. They didn't want to play them. The SEC made them take them off the schedule. I just, the stupidity run rampant here. But here's a quick one. If y'all look at Georgia's schedule for next year.
Yeah, it's the revenge. Look, this year's schedule, it just turned out it wasn't a tough schedule for Georgia. It just wasn't, right?
It's bottom heavy at the end.
It was, but they're making up for it next year with their road games.
Yeah, but we'll have some ball about this. Well, folks, we'll do this, and we got lots more to discuss. The end of the year is coming up. We're going to do our end of the year episodes. We're going to have fun here. James and Chip, we always keep you interested, and James keeps us hilariously laughing through these things. We love them. That's what Friday's Finest is all about, for you to get off on the good weekend. Have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again. Chip, say goodbye.
Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Army-Navy game. It's the only sporting event all year where everybody playing is willing to die for everybody watching. Y'all have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.
James?
I'm never going to walk again.
No. Get back out there this afternoon. Now, get back out there. Yes, and we appreciate it. And also, I'm going to echo Chip's sentiment as somebody, a 22-year lifer in the Air Force and Navy. It's time for a great ball game tomorrow. By the way, Army wins Commander-in-Chief trophy because my Air Force decided just to lay an egg when Army showed up in town.
Boy, they did.
Always root for Army, baby.
Also that's something we never talked about. Air Force just went downhill quickly. We lost like 3 or 4 more games. I don't know what happened, but you got to, folks, if you don't watch this game, at least DVR the pregame. At least DVR the pregame to Army Navy. It is, and now I've heard that game day is actually going to be there, which they normally never do. Folks, if you need stuff throughout the year to remind you how good you have it in life, watch the pregame and the stuff for Army Navy. It'll get you and it'll keep you going. Other than that, we love you. We appreciate you. Go to DougCollinsPodcast.com. We'll see you again on Friday's Finest.